Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for waking up with me on Up with India. Today, I will be joined by philanthropist and president of Relevant Solutions Group, DC native Kia Ervin Williams. And while her contributions to society and the community are most notable, today we dive into a more personal side of her story, a side that far too many women can relate to. In fact, 1 in 4 women experience this tragedy. Kia is here with me today to share her story from rain to rainbow. Thank you for your bravery and joining us on the show just after Infant Loss Month. I really appreciate it, Kia. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, for the Delaware area, this space is familiar.
Yeah, it's been a couple years, but yes.
Yes, it has been a couple of years. You
Yeah,
moved on to another state, so we welcome you back
thank
with Delaware energy. But I really do appreciate you being on the show, Kia, to tell this amazing story that probably a lot of people wouldn't know if they don't follow you on social media.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it was Facebook that I learned about your journey, the more personal side of your journey, because we have our own relationship.
yeah.
But I'm happy to get deep into it. But before I do want you to introduce yourself for those that do not know you. I don't know how they don't.
Yeah.
Please do introduce yourself.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm Kia Irvin Williams, but when I lived there, I was just Kia Irvin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am in outside of Dallas, Texas now, moved and got married and kind of kept pushing here a few years ago. But yeah, I worked for communities and schools in Delaware for years, and then did a program with the Longwood Foundation called Accelerate Delaware. So yeah, life was really different then. I was the single career girl having a wonderful time, making a difference in the first state. But it's nice to be here today and to talk about something that what honestly wasn't even really on my mind then because it was a different, like totally different phase of life. But yeah, yeah. And if I sound out of breath, it's because I am 9 months pregnant. Yeah, so my lungs and everything is just sucked up with this little guy that we'll be meeting in a few weeks. So
My
yeah,
goodness, yes, and that's why it was so important for us to try to get you on the show early because we didn't know
really
when you
coming.
were
Yes.
But yeah, my goodness. So communities and schools, you've had history, working with children or youth,
Mhm.
right? And so that's kind of been your passion project, purpose, place for a little while. Tell me how you got into that work before we do start to switch gears and talk about.
Sure. My career actually started in public relations. I did PR for NASCAR's diversity program called Drive for Diversity. And I was hired on the agency side. And when I was hired, I was the only woman and the only person of color on the diversity team. So that really just started this road of telling a story for Black people without Black people at the table. And I was like, this can't happen. And so I decided that, that side of corporate America really wasn't for me. And so I got my master's in counseling and actually started working at Johnson C. Smith University at an HBCU in Charlotte. And the more I worked with the college population, I was like, I love it, but we've got to start sooner. And that's actually how I got introduced to CIS. And then moved to Delaware, continued to work for the organization, and was the regional director between Delaware and New York. And yeah, I mean, I just saw a need that wasn't being met, and it became a passion. I didn't even realize. I knew I always loved being involved with the community and with people. And it's funny, after being a site coordinator for a few years, I was like, I don't think that I'm the front kind of line worker. I wanted to tell the story. I wanted to create change in a different way. And so that's kind of when we met too. But yeah, it started there, just telling the story. And that's really what opened my eyes to the world of philanthropy, because it was all these old rich guys and a few of us. And it was like, okay, how do we also, like I said, get more women, more people of color at the table, making decisions about how funding is delegated, some of the cultural nuances and competencies that I didn't see there. And there's a lot of money out there, but it's being pulled sort of for the same thing. So how can we be innovative, look at social investments and other things to just really tell the story more and get more people engaged and have a chance to give on many levels. We need the big donors and endowments, but we also, can engage a lot better than what we do sort of as a community in a lot of ways for those of us who are upwardly mobile and have the ability to do a little bit more. So
Definitely. And you know what? I think it takes a certain level of bravery to want to even speak up and speak out in those spaces where it may be uncomfortable to do that. And, during that time,
Oh,
you were able to do that. Now you kind of step up and step out in a different way, in another brave way, telling a story that far too many women are ashamed to speak on or talk
mhm,
oftentimes keep to themselves, or you
mhm.
wouldn't know unless maybe you went through that similar thing and then open up, and then they open up, right?
Yeah.
And so, what led you, Kia, to kind of be more transparent
Mhm,
with your journey? Something that was so personal, really doesn't have nothing to do with your professional work
mhm.
that people know you by. And what led you to want to start speaking on what you went through?
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly just that, like I didn't realize there was such this like secret society almost, if you will. And so many women like just wear a badge of shame. I remember with my first miscarriage, it was many years ago. My ex-husband was my college sweetheart, and so we were young, and I was like, oh, most women have a miscarriage, and didn't think much of it. And then I had another miscarriage, and I was like, okay, wait a minute, something's wrong with me. And so just even the medical journey of not getting answers from people, like unless there's something like glaringly wrong, they're just kind of like, try again, or I don't know. And it's weird. I've had I think a different relationship with infertility than so many women, because I was always kind of like, if kids happen, awesome, but if not, I mean, I love my career, I love traveling the world. I was like, I'm down to be the cool auntie. So I think that was something else that was weird. I think when women talk about it, I have friends and people who, will cry at the sight of a pregnant woman, and it just was overtaking their life, overtaking their marriage, where, intimacy wasn't even about intimacy anymore. It was about getting pregnant. And I was like, I never want to get to that place. So really just in being an advocate, honestly trying to figure out what was going on with my body, not even to conceive. And actually how I ended up pregnant. I was just trying to get healthy and figure out what's going on. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about it because I'm like, it's not a secret. You're not a bad woman. You're not a failure. You're not like, if we could control this, we would. So just knowing what's going on and being an advocate, especially for Black women in this space where not just is infant mortality highest, but maternal mortality rates are high, and just not being believed in medical communities when something feels off, was just exhausting. And so I just wanted to share and let people know, they're not alone and there is hope.
Oftentimes when women do experience miscarriage, it comes in different forms. Some is a miscarriage. Some women think that they're just on their period, right? And
Yeah.
it is a miscarriage, and they miss these signs. How
Yeah.
can a woman, or how can a woman identify early on what's happening to her body, so that she can kind of get on top of it, like you said,
Yeah.
more about her health, to kind of, I can't say make sure it doesn't happen again.
Sure.
From certain circumstances, it's
Right.
not really what the woman is doing or what she's, what she is or she isn't doing, but it could be other things. But tell me how
Mhm.
some ways that women can kind of identify
Mhm.
what's going on.
That's a really interesting question because it's actually what happened to me. So the first miscarriage, I wasn't sure. I was like, was just the like really heavy, painful period. And by the time my gynecologist was able to see me, it was a couple days later. Well, if the miscarriage is successful, your HCG number should be going down. So you won't necessarily have a positive pregnancy test by the time you're seen. And in that case, I was so early on in my pregnancy that, it wasn't like my cervix would still have been open and just some of the other things. And so with the second miscarriage, I was further along, but the same thing happened. And I was like, that was a miscarriage the first time, so even having to fight to say what happened because, just trying to get in and be seen by a specialist without going to the ER. But yeah, I mean, to your point, it looks different. I mean, I've had 4 miscarriages and they've been a little different each time, but again, listening to your body. But it's crazy with the first one, even though medically it wasn't validated at first, I still kind of mourned. I felt sad. I was like, something's off. I think it's really listening to your body and trusting your body. So, like in my case, I wasn't diagnosed until a year and a half ago. Can't talk. It's pregnancy brain. A year and a half.
A year and a half.
Thank you. I'm stuck. And so and she just haphazardly said it in a appointment one day, like, oh yeah, because women with PCOS, da, 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 da. And I'm like, wait. So I have PCOS. Like it was never even a direct conversation like, hey, we finally identified what's going on with you. And so that was my last time seeing her, which was a specialist and my OBGYN. And I decided to go a holistic route. And I just scoured the internet for resources for women with PCOS and was able to manage so much just with diet, exercise. There are certain foods that I thought were healthy that I was eating that really were feeding into what was already going on hormonally with my body. And, to me, that brought up another inequity, which I guess is why I stay in sort of this justice and philanthropic world, because most holistic things are out of pocket. So thankfully, my husband and I have been able to have the means to explore and do what it takes, to take care of my body. But that's not the case for everyone. And a lot of the practitioners can't accept insurance because anything that's not shoving drugs down your throat, unfortunately, is not widely accepted, in America. So I just think you have to be a fearless advocate for yourself and don't do it alone. So I learned that several of my friends also happen to have PCOS.
And
And
when you say PCOS, for those that are unfamiliar with,
sure, it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. So your ovaries just basically produce cysts, and you are insulin resistant, and so you can have like higher levels of testosterone in your body. Um, just your adrenal functions are off a little bit. You may not ovulate regularly, so trying to even get pregnant. And then because your hormones are off, you don't typically produce enough progesterone to make it past the first trimester of pregnancy, which is why if you do get pregnant, many women then experience loss. But that's something that a lot of people aren't looking for until you're a certain age, or unless you're actively trying to get pregnant. And I wasn't, so they were just kind of like, she'll figure it out, or they were like, oh, just have IVF. And I was like, why would I pay for in vitro fertilization, which again most insurance companies don't cover and can be over $20,000 if you can't tell me I'm not going to miscarry. So it's just a process again where without a strong community of friends, there's all sorts of support groups online and on Facebook that you can find, and having a supportive partner to really, again, my thing was always fight for my health. A baby is the bonus, because when I know what's going on with myself, then I'm healthy mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, to really bring life into the world, not with the pain and the trauma of all the past loss, because you can really carry a lot of guilt around it and frustration, and just,
sure.
your body keeps score of those kinds of things. And so I was just trying to be free of all of that to, if that was the plan, that I would be able to carry in a healthy way. So.
You slowly started to unpack so many things that I have. And that last quote that you just said, your body keeps score of those
Mhm.
things. Let's just run it back just a quick second.
Yeah.
You talked about, going through this 4 times. You said, there was a point in time where you said there's something wrong with me.
Mhm.
That run through women's mind all the time. But kind of talk to me about, the most important person in this process, you. What was your emotional journey like, and how were you able to overcome each loss to even be able to see
Mhm.
today? Where
Yeah. I think that's kind of the, I don't know, I guess, interesting part of my journey, again, where I think typically the women I meet were trying each time. So all of mine were surprise pregnancies. I was not trying to get pregnant. My doctors were either like switching me from a different birth control, because again, my body was showing that something was wrong. So it was like, sometimes in between those things, where it was just like, how did I even get pregnant? And so um, I think, like I said, I was married before, and it was just a very unhealthy marriage, which would be a whole nother episode to have together. So I was married before I moved to Delaware. So I moved to Delaware single, because I got married really young. So I think there was just so much trauma happening in my life. That was one more thing. So the pain couldn't honestly just be the pain of losing a baby. It was everything. And so there was a part of me, and this is something that I think in meeting more women who are ashamed to say even this, there was a part of me that felt relieved almost to not bring a baby into such a toxic, horrible marriage. And that even feels like really crummy to say, right? Like, because I think life is a blessing, and I wouldn't wish miscarriage or loss on my worst enemy. But there was a part of me that was like, I got to get out of that without ties to that unhealthy relationship and just really, again, heal and reinvent myself and start living in my dream. I mean, that's when, you know, personally and professionally things went. I mean, my life in Delaware was just on such a beautiful trajectory that I was glad I didn't have a lot of baggage and other connection to him. So it was just this constant, it was almost like I was living an oxymoron. Like I was sad it happened and I had to grieve that and get past feeling like what's going on with my body, but also just start over kind of. And then with my husband now, I had never been supported through a miscarriage. So
Right.
when we first got married, and again, I was off birth control because I was going to see different practitioners, and they were like, you can't be on anything. We need to see what your body is actually doing. And so they kind of like birth control and things sort of muddy the waters of your natural hormones. And so we thought we were being careful. But again, if you don't ovulate when you think you're ovulating, then, there you go. So um, it, it was very sad, but also it was the first time I wasn't dealing with it alone and didn't have a bunch of like other toxic turmoil stuff happening. And so while the loss was sad, I also felt so incredibly loved and supported by my partner in a way that I had not experienced with any of the previous losses. And so again, it was sad, but I think God also just really allowed that time to make our connection even stronger. And it just really catapulted us into, again, this journey of health, right? So like we got married and gained the freshman 15, I guess, if you will, of marriage, and even more than that. Because I go from living downtown on Market Street and walking up the street to work
Right.
to 1313 Innovation to my office to like driving 45 minutes everywhere in Texas, so I'm just fat and happy. And we were like, we just need to get this together. Like, people are like, oh, that makes you happy. And we're trying
Sure am.
to fix this. So we just started again, like getting back to exercise, getting to eating well, and to understanding what was going on with my hormones and getting supplements to address some of those issues. And so I don't know that we would have taken that journey as seriously or done it as quickly had we not had the loss that we had together. We experienced, I guess, was maybe 6 months or so into our marriage, and it gave us time to figure ourselves out too. Because, like, there was a part of me that's like, okay, you're 35, getting married again, like your clock is ticking. You've already had problems, but then we were like, do we want kids, or do we just want to, give everything we have to the community? There's a lot of kids that are already here that need love. So, we were having, all of those things we were trying to figure out as well. And now here we are adding one of our own to love while we still figure out how we love the community.
Oh
So,
my goodness, just such a beautiful story. Oh my goodness. Kia, as you describe, your relationship with now your husband, your partner, your life partner who's, has taken this journey with you. I find it I guess I find it so ironic that even after, the first stage of your life, you walked into this new chapter and you still experience this pain and tragedy.
mhm,
Um, you know, doctors will say it's kind of harder to get pregnant than you think. A lot of people think it's just a whip and a boom, and
mhm.
oftentimes it's not. There's a process that happens there, and I think that it's awesome that you were able to have your partner there, so supportive of you. But did you ever feel shame? In that moment, some women describe
Um,
feeling that. Did you go?
yeah, I think with the first two, well, the first miscarriage, I just felt confused. The second, I absolutely felt shame. I was like, I have one job, it's to protect the baby inside of me. That's it. That's your job. And you failed. And at that time, again, they still weren't sure why. So they were taking all sorts of guesses. And so, like, my blood type is O negative. So they're like, if your partner's blood type isn't O negative, then maybe your body is treating it as like a foreign object. If some like, well, did I like do this myself? You just feel lots of that. But again, I had to decide that that would be as dumb as one of my friends with cancer or something saying, I mean, things happen. Bad things happen to good people, unfortunately, all the time. And so I think I had to decide that I was going to stop beating myself up for something that I couldn't control. And we can all do things better or healthier or whatever. But again, well, I mean, working in organizations with kids and in fragile communities. I see all the time women that do not take care of their bodies at all and have like 5 and 6 kids. So it's just, you just don't know, right? It's not a perfect algorithm to or formula to know what's going to make a pregnancy last in your body or not. And so when you know more, you do more. So like this time I knew certain supplements I needed to take. The second I found out I was pregnant, I got on progesterone because, again, understanding now with PCOS, that's something my body wasn't producing enough of. But those were things I didn't know the first three miscarriages, And so with the knowledge that I had, I did more, and I've had a successful pregnancy, but I couldn't go back and blame myself for what I didn't know. All I could do was hold myself accountable for, again, doing the research, doing the work, being an advocate for myself, finding solutions. And some people never find solutions and won't know, but I just think that you can't punish yourself. That's not, it's not productive. It's not productive. Making a choice to end a pregnancy is one thing, and that's someone's choice. But if you didn't make that choice, you can't shame yourself. And I think, again, when you share your journey and have a community with other people, it normalizes it, because I've met so many women who had similar experience. I mean, hundreds of women have reached out to me since my post of sharing my story, like, oh, I've never told anybody, or I have fibroids, or what supplements are you taking? What did you find? And, one woman I've talked to, she was literally trying for 20 years. And she's never told anybody. And I'm like, why do that alone? And, these people have community. So I think, one, we need to not normalize it in a way to say, oh, it's awesome, it happens to everyone. But in whatever challenge it is, I believe that we are blessed to be a part of communities and people who love us, who will walk with us. And if we don't know people, like I said, now in the internet age and social media, there are all sorts of places where you can find a community and not live in shame alone.
And I think that it's important to also note that miscarriage is also a part of the birth process. I think that's just a part that is sometimes left out. It is a type of process, right? And so, in a sense, you are giving birth. It's just not in the end all be all way. What were some of those groups though that you leaned on for support, if any, that women that are watching today could possibly lean on as well?
So I looked for a nutritionist that specialized in PCOS, and they put like menu, like, meal planning things, and would talk about, oh, my doctor said this, did your doctor say that? And I'll say, even in those groups, you still have to know yourself and guard your heart, because sometimes the stories, like right now being pregnant, there were certain things that I'm guarding my heart. I'm just not reading. I don't want to hear about, a person who had another loss, or, this emergency C-section, or this, like, I'm not trying to be naive, but you just know what you can take in and when you can take it in. So be kind to yourself, even in your knowledge journey. But I think another thing that really helped me was affirmations. And so I just believe that, life and death is the power of life and death is in our tongue. So no, I couldn't necessarily like say out loud and magically stop, previous miscarriages in their tracks. But, I said, like, this birth will result in life, and my body is healthy, and it will produce everything it needs to create a safe home for my baby. And because I had to start believing differently, because when I first found out I was pregnant, after being like, oh shoot, is this really happening? I was gripped with fear instantly, because it was like, I don't want that to happen again. Like, I wasn't actively trying, but now that I'm here, I don't want to lose another baby. And so I think we let fear bully us so often. And so just speaking what I believed, for me, I'm a Christian. And so for me, there were lots of things I found in the Bible about health, the promises I believe that are mine about health, or like there's a scripture that even says there'll be no miscarriages and barren women among you. Like, I said, that counts. I count. I'm not going to have another miscarriage. So with whatever you believe in, finding ways to speak life to a situation that has constantly looked like death is so powerful, because it disarms. I was then able to, again, focus on health and positive things, instead of every little thing I felt, oh, is that a miscarriage? I'm about to, like, you can do that. And even now, like, I'm almost 36 weeks, I could have him right now and he could live, on his own and be healthy. But sometimes if he didn't kick as much as he kicked the day before, I find myself being like, is everything okay? And it's like, you have to constantly just frame your mind to not be gripped by fear. And so that has again come from my husband affirming that, my family affirming that. I have a few friends that, I mean, my whole village of friends and even social media has been so incredibly loving and supporting through all of this. But I've had just a small group of friends that we've just, shared those intimate moments where they'll be like, ma'am, have you done your confessions today? Sit your butt down. You're working too hard. Like, chill out, And so, just really almost being like my spiritual midwives. Like, I have my midwife and doula who I go medically see, and just also my girls who are just, encouraging me through the process. So, I think that that's really important to find that. But search the hashtags in the Facebook groups if you don't have that in person. It's out there. It's amazing what all is out there.
I'm glad that you did bring up midwives and doulas. As I was telling you earlier, I had on a woman who's the founder of organization Black Mothers in Power on just
Mhm.
last Friday, and she was talking about advocating to get legislation here in Delaware passed that would allow women to be able to have access to doulas, and it would be paid for through Medicaid.
Interesting.
So that's a hope, right? And so something that they're
Yeah.
fighting for, because, like you said, it is so expensive. What is your advice to women who, are early on in the birthing process and they're trying to figure out how they're going to pay for this expense to kind
Yeah.
of start, shifting around their finances to make it work?
Yeah. I mean, if you're actively trying, I think babies are expensive, and that's one of the things, like, that was one of the decisions. Like, I knew I wanted to have a certain, diet for him. I knew I didn't want to have to send him to a daycare as soon as he's born, especially in the midst of a pandemic. And
Yeah.
so there's just some tough financial decisions I think that you have to think of. I just had this conversation with my midwife because she's struggling to accept Medicaid. She gets paid $400 a birth. Where out of pocket I'd be paying, I think it's like more like six or $7,000 for the services. I could be wrong on that. But we just set up monthly installments, for payments. But midwifery is so different than going to a gynecologist, and to each his own. I'm not knocking that at all, but every time I went to a gynecologist I was told how old I was. I was like a geriatric pregnancy. Did I want to freeze my eggs? And you've had all these losses before, and it
Mhm.
just felt so negative
Yeah.
and so rushed. Like, it was like, okay, next. It kind of felt like I was on a assembly line. And I've been to, gosh, dozens of gynecologists and obstetricians trying to find a good fit. But the first time I went into my midwife, that was the first time I fully felt listened to. I did not feel rushed. She listened to me because we know our bodies best. And it's just been an amazing process that I wish every woman could experience, regardless of socioeconomic status. And that was a big thing for her. So as patients now, she's built in where we pay a little bit more. We pay market rate so that she can actually do more pro bono services for
Wow.
women who can't afford. So I think midwives and doulas are out here being rock stars, especially for Black women, where our maternal mortality rates are just insane. And the thing that really, I think, coming from the nonprofit world, I was used to seeing death rates and sickness rates higher in low income communities. But when I learned that income and education had nothing to do with it, I was like, oh, okay, this is just this is systematic, and this is unconscious bias that has lived in medicine, and I've experienced it. Like I said, my experiences have been crazy in this space. So I think that there are more options now. I'm not as, familiar with what's available in Delaware now, but like there are some organizations in Dallas now, and I'm sure all across the country, who do work specifically with, on some sort of a sliding income scale so that you can still have a level of care. But they take less patients because they provide such excellent qualities of care. So it is a little bit more expensive, so they can't kind of bulk up on Medicaid and those patients. But yeah, I definitely wish her the best in trying to get those policies passed because it's frightening.
Mhm.
It's really crazy.
It,
Yeah.
yeah, it really is, and it's sad. And you're so right. It doesn't really matter if you are someone that lives in a poor neighborhood or if you're Chrissy Teigen, right?
Right? Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
happening, at these high rates, and it's very scary. But you know, to add a silver lining, to all of this, Kia. Hopefully there will come a time in a woman's life where she, no longer is in that stage where she's going through the loss, but she gets to this stage where
Yeah,
she is now, and she's not crippled by that fear, and it is time to move forward.
yeah,
Just any advice about, getting those negative affirmations out your head,
yeah.
such as like, I'm not going to be a good mom, or I
Yeah.
made this child, or what so have you. Any ways to kind of work through those moments?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think being very intentional. I think you have to be honest when you know those thoughts are coming up. So, like in our bathroom, I got like a cork board with index cards, and I literally wrote like there's 12 affirmations on there, and so I see them constantly, throughout the day, and I stop to say them because I mean, our brain is a machine; it's wired, and so if our only connection to pregnancy has been loss or fear or whatever, we literally have to rewire how we think about this process. And so, like I said, I was like, my womb is no longer a tomb. It will bring forth life. And I had to start believing those things. And again, I don't think it's a magic formula. May not always work, but I tried to put actionable steps to my faith and to my affirmations. So yes, that meant I had to take progesterone for 14 weeks, even though it made me incredibly nauseous and feel disgusting, probably worse than, what typically you feel in first trimester. And, I've had to eat a very, very clean, strict diet because I'm at high risk for gestational diabetes because with PCOS, you're insulin resistant. So, while some of my pregnant friends were like, girl, it was my excuse to eat whatever, like I am on a really strict meal plan. So the good news is I've only gained 14 pounds. So hopefully my bounce back will be, wonderful. But I had so there are sacrifices. So there's a very practical side to eating well, drinking water, trying to rest, trying to remain stress-free. There were things that I just had to say no to. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, presidential election stuff. I mean, it's just a stressful time wanting to see my family. My family's there. My parents retired to Smyrna and I'm all the way in Dallas, and they're in their 70s. What does it look like to travel during COVID? So all of those things that can be a worry. You just have to focus and center and believe that my baby is in me in this time, and we're gonna make it work. God knew that this pandemic was coming. He knew I was gonna get pregnant, so I just have to do my part. And so I think that the big thing that helped me reframe my thoughts daily, though, were those affirmations. I just had to speak what I believe to be true, whether that's what I saw or felt or experienced at the time or not. I had to really focus there and then just kind of see the rest unfold.
You did share with us that the baby will be a boy.
Yes.
Any names in the pot so far?
Yes, his name is Kyle Alexander.
And why was that? Why was that name chosen? Any specific reason?
Yeah. Well, first, picking a name is pressure, man. Like, I did grow up like doodling names and thinking, but then you got to like make that decision with another person, and
Huh?
we were not agreeing on names at all. And I'm Kia, he's Keith, so we were both K. So I was like, well, let's keep a K theme. And so we were like, oh, this is tough. And actually, his mom had a stillborn son. She was, I think, 32 or 30 weeks, somewhere around there, but she lost a baby who was a boy, and they were actually going to name him Kyle. And so I always loved the name Kai because I'm Kia. I was like, all you got to do is switch the letters, and you've got Kai. My husband doesn't like Kai. And so Kyle was kind of close to Kai, but then he liked it. And then it just became really special because not only will this be my first live birth, it's also sort of reclaiming the name that was a pain point for his family with loss, also meaning new life. So it's just been Kyle is just bringing us new life all around. And so we're just really excited to get ready to welcome him into our family.
Oh, that is beautiful. When did your
Yeah.
mother-in-law share that story with you?
Um, way before I was even pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's just kind of been one of those things that they talked about. And so that's the thing, like pain can last a long time because I think he would be like 30 or something or somewhere close to that by now if he lived. So again, it's just pain can last if, depends on what you do with the pain. And so, again, just trying to repurpose that into a legacy of new life now, with his name. So yeah, the story was kind of known and Kyle was always kind of in the running, but we were like, I don't know. And then one day it just hit us both, and we were like, "That's it." Yeah. And then I like the meaning. It means like straight passage. And then with me again with community and giving and justice, I was like, well, what's a strong middle name that means something good too? So Alexander means defender of mankind. So I was like, yes,
Beautiful.
straight honest man that defends others. I can do that.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe I have a resume worthy name because I'm gonna bring out my CIS. What's on your resume? So yeah, so we kind of ticked a few boxes with that.
To wrap us up, Kia, again, like you said, in just a few weeks, you will be giving birth to this precious baby boy. And if you were able to run this tape back, in a couple months, and you're talking to Kia the mommy,
Oh,
finally here, what message do you give to her?
oh,
In the times that she's going to feel weak, tired,
yeah.
stressed, to keep going.
Oh, wow. Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Um, I think that it would be to extend grace. I think the same way that I extended grace to myself early in the pregnancy with getting past fear and figuring it out and just having a faith-filled sort of stick to itiveness. Do the same, in motherhood. When you're tired, be tired. When you need help, get help, and be gracious. And I think just reminding myself that babies are resilient and I don't have to be perfect. I think that's another thing that as women, we definitely, especially professional Black women, we're like, we have to be better, And so just reminding myself to not be perfect and sort of give the same grace and positive affirmations to myself as a mom as I did, in this pregnancy and fertility journey. So
Beautiful.
we'll
Thank
see.
you so much. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Thank
Again, congratulations. Super looking forward
you.
to pictures in the journey. I hope that
Yeah.
you keep us engaged with that. And
Thank
I'm definitely looking forward to it.
thank you.
And thank you to all of you for watching.